Yo, what's good, YouTube, man? It's Gary with another Fan TV back at you another video. Like the content in this video, go smash that like button. Like the content in this channel, go and subscribe, man. Look, Ravens versus Texans, man. Talk about the game, get my thoughts on it. What the Ravens probably have to do to, actually come out there with a victory, right? Um, let's go over the injury report first. I talked about the Ravens injuries yesterday, but I can go over that again. But we'll talk about the Texans first. The notable players that I see on the Texas injury report are all going to play. So you got Nico Collins and Derek Stingley. They were both on the Texas injury report, but they have no injury designation going into the game. So those guys are definitely going to be out there. Some guys that are going to be out. Fatukasi is going to be out for the Texans, and Nico Autry is going to be out as well for Houston. Okay. And now for the Ravens, obviously that's not the story. That's not the case, I should say. The Ravens injury list is much longer than that. All right. So for the Ravens, as far as people that are going to be out, you got Chidobe Awuzie, you got Marlon Humphrey, you got Lamar Jackson, you got Pat Ricard, you got Roquan Smith, and not Emory Jones, excuse me, who just returned to practice off of being off of IR. A couple of guys questionable. Kyle Hamilton, but he was DNP, so I'm not sure if he's going to play. Let's see. Dafayole as well was a DNP on Friday. They got him listed as questionable. Devontae Walker is questionable, but he was a full participant in practice on Friday, so I believe he'll play. Ronnie Stanley, questionable, but he was a limited participation the last day, so this Friday. So he has a chance, but we saw Ronnie Stanley give it a chance versus the Chiefs. He lasted one or two series, and then he was out of there, right? So I'm not sure how much he can give the Ravens right now currently. But guys that are going to play, that's on the injury report: Travis Jones, Linderbaum, Brent Urban, Kyle Van Noy, and Nate Wiggins, right? Nate Wiggins got carted off the field with that arm injury last week. So obviously that was just very, very precautionary, and he's fine. I'm gonna say he's fine, but he's well enough to play, right? So he's going to be out there Sunday for the Ravens, all right? Now, Texans last three games. Texans are 1-2 in their last three games, right? 2019 loss versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 17-10 L versus the Jaguars. And then in last week, they bounced back in a big way, getting, I believe, which is their first win of the season versus the Tennessee Titans. They won 26-0, right? So now you got a battle of two teams that are 1-3. The Ravens won their second game of the year. Texas won last week, right? So, this is a disappointing start for the season for the Texans. I mean, to be quite honest with you, right? You look at a team like the Jaguars. A lot of people in their mind that they're supposed to beat the Jags. The Bucs are one of the premier teams in the NFC. If you're not talking about like your Eagles or your Lions, the Buccaneers are kind of in that mix after that, right? So that's not a bad loss, but definitely supposed to beat the Jags, right? And it didn't happen. Jags looked decent this year, but you had to say that Texas was probably the favorite in the AFC South coming into the year. All right. First off, let's talk about the Texas defense, right? This is the strength of their team. You got Will Anderson, you got Daniil Hunter, Derek Stingley, who I mentioned earlier, is going to play, who showed up on the injury report. They got a lot of quality people on the team. Now, they did have CJ Gardner Johnson, but he didn't quite get along, so they got him out of there. But that don't mean they have holes at safety. They got young, talented safeties back there that are ready to play, make plays on the ball, and hit you, right? Kalen Bullock being one of them, okay? Now, Texas defense, they're only giving up 12.8 points a game. Now, that's helped out a lot by shutting out the Titans last week, but still, this has been a good defense all year, right? 280 yards a game allowed for fifth, only 35% on third down, 13, so middle of the pack there. Middle of the pack in rushing yards, closer to the middle of the pack, but still pretty good unit, 102 yards a game. Passing yards only allowing 178 yards a game passing. They're getting almost 3 sacks a game. They're top 10 in both of those metrics, right? So this team, this is going to be a very, very tough game for the Ravens, right? We're talking about the Ravens that's not going to have Lamar Jackson, as I mentioned earlier, right? So this is going to be Cooper Rush. So this is really going to be about what can the Ravens do to help Cooper Rush, one, stay upright. This ain't Lamar Jackson back there. So bad O-line play is going to be amplified with Cooper Rush back there. So can they help him stay upright? Can they operate quickly? Can they do things to get the ball out of his hands and not have to have Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter coming after him? Because he's not escaping those guys. All right. It's just not happening. Okay. And so we'll see what happens there, but that's going to be the main thing. What can the Ravens do to help out Cooper Rush in his first game of the season? All right. So we'll see what happens there. Now, listen, people keep bringing up that I saw people bringing up the fact that Cooper Rush had a really, really good game versus the Texans, I believe, last season when the Cowboys played them. It's a different situation. All right. Last year was last year. He's in a new offense, new players around him. It's a different situation. Could he do it again? Sure, maybe. But I don't see. I think he threw for like 350 yards that game. I don't see that happening. Okay, I'm just going to be quite honest with you. If he does, great. We're going to hand clap it. But don't go into the game expecting that. To be quite honest with you. Okay. Texans offense. Texas offense has been a unit that has struggled, and not really. A lot of people are putting blame on C.J. Stroud. Now, I'm not saying C.J. Stroud doesn't have some blame. He's not hitting necessarily the highs he hit really as a rookie. But the offensive line they have is not very good, right? Ravens fans, we know about not great offensive line play. Texans are going through something very, very similar at the current time. All right, their offensive line is not giving a lot of the protection, not a lot of time, and it's kind of forcing C.J. Stroud to play a game where he doesn't really want to play, right? He's a nice, good rhythm quarterback, gets the ball out of his hands, but he's having to do the play even faster now. So I don't think it really suits his play style. And if you look at C.J. Stroud, a lot of his great moments, is throwing the ball down the field, but he can't really push the ball down the field when your offensive line. You can't trust the offensive line in front of you. So it's a tough situation for him, if I'm being quite honest. All right, but like I said, it's a struggling offense. So 16 points a game, right? 16 points a game. 29th in the NFL, 288 yards a game, 25th in the NFL, only converting on 29% of their third downs for 31st. And they're just not getting a lot of plays, honestly. They're only getting 21 rush attempts a game, only 29 passing attempts a game. They're bottom 10 in the league in both of those. So they're not getting a lot of plays. They're off the field very often, but that makes sense. If you're not converting on your third downs, you're not getting a fresh set of downs to continue drives. All right, so that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like I said, C.J. Stroud is not complete. He's completing a good percentage of his passes, 67%. That's 12th in the league. But the Texans right now they're allowing 2.5 sacks a game, which is 21st in the NFL. So if I'm looking at this as the Ravens, right, when I watch the Texans offense, they don't seem to be in rhythm because their quarterback has to be sped up because he doesn't trust the offensive lineman in front of him. The Ravens don't have a good pass rush, right? So we're going to be completely honest about that. The Ravens defense is also injured, so we know about that as well, right? And so far this year, if you want to have a get-right game, it's been played at Baltimore Ravens, right? So the Ravens have to find a way to get help. It's kind of the same thing with I said with the Chiefs last week. The Chiefs were a struggling offense. Can you make them continue to struggle? The Ravens could not. The Texans are a struggling offense. Can you have them continue to struggle? We'll see. All right, now the Texans offense it doesn't have a Patrick Mahomes, leading them, right? I like C.J. Stroud. He's not that. Okay, so the Ravens have to find a way to make it happen. All right, now this, like I said, the defensive line has been very good, but I think a lot of that has to do with the scheme, right? Too many times on big third downs, I'm seeing Mike Green in coverage. I'm seeing Tavis Robinson in coverage. He's trying to do Zach Orr's trying to disguise and do things and have blitzes that are just not effective and not working. All right, so play it a little simpler. Have the guys that you pay to rush the passer. This is a very gettable offensive line for the Texans. They're not a good unit. So you have guys that you are paying to get after the QB. Have them get after the QB. All right. Let the actual linebackers, your Teddy Buchanan and Trenton Simpson, who are going to play a lot, maybe some Jake Humble, have them worry about dropping in the coverage. Now, if you want to blitz them every now and then, cool. I think Trenton Simpson could probably be a very effective blitzer, right? Kind of in the same mode of like how Patrick Queen was his last couple years in Baltimore before he left, right? Very effective blitzer, right? Better going forward than dropping backwards. That could be very well what Trenton Simpson could do. But as far as the edge rushers, I don't want to see anybody in the 90s in coverage. I really don't. Or very rarely, right? I don't want to see Adafi always dropping back. I don't want to see, like I said, Tavis Robinson. I don't want to see Mike Green, especially Mike Green. He's drafted in the second round, not to play, not to play, spot drop zone in the middle of the field. That's not why he was drafted. Okay, it was to get after the quarterback. So, but like I said, the Ravens. This defense has to be able to get after it. Texas has some weapons on offense as well, so the cornerbacks are going to be tested. Nate Wiggins versus Nico Collins. Nico Collins is one of the best receivers in the NFL. I look at the Texans. They also got young Jaden Higgins. I believe Christian Kirk is back playing as well. Dalton Schultz is a decent safety blanket tight end. So they have some weapons, right? Woody Marks kind of broke out last week, had a big game. Nick Chubb has been okay. So they have skill position players, right? very similar to the Ravens. Like, you have good skill position players, but can the offensive line really keep it together? Now, so keys to the game, right? Let's talk about the keys to the game. Talked about it a little bit already. Offense this is game manager Cooper Rush, right? To me, that's what it's going to come down to, right? Take the yards that are there. Don't try to be a hero. I think the last time he played the Texans, the game that people have been showing, he was like 33 to 52, 350 yards, something like that. If Cooper Rush has to throw the ball 50 times, the Ravens lost. All right, I'm just going to put that out there. They didn't win the game. All right, so that can't happen. But that's going to be on Todd Monken to devise the game plan to actually run the ball more, things like that. We don't have to take Derrick Henry off the field so much, right? I get that Justice Hill is the pass catching back. I know all of that, but besides the Chiefs game, he hasn't been very effective to me this year, right? So, I would love to see Derrick Henry play some more. He's only playing 52% of snaps, right? Now, last year was only 57, but there have been times for the Titans when he's played 70, 67, 66. The Ravens are putting Derrick Henry on a pitch count, saving him for the playoffs when you got to win games right now to get to the playoffs. Like, I get it. You don't want to put all these miles on Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry's already, 30, 31 years old. I get all of that. You need Derrick Henry, right? You don't have to say every time we got to pass the ball, Derrick Henry come off the field. That's unnecessary, and that's a tell to the defense. All right. So that's how you got about Cooper Rush. And Cooper Rush, when you're throwing the ball, like I said, take what's there. Now for the defense, to me, the defense is going to be the real what I'm looking at, right? And I'm talking about Zach Orr. Can you devise an effective game plan right here, right? Can we protect the cornerbacks, right? Because there are going to be some cornerback injuries, right? Wiggins going to be out there. TJ Tampa's going to be out there. But there's not a lot of starting guys, right? So you're going to have to protect your corners, right? Can you draw up ways for the defensive line to get one-on-one, and hopefully those guys win? This is not a good Texans offensive line, like I said before. They're not a good unit. So this Ravens defensive line, Odafe Oweh doesn't have a sack this year. He has to get one. I don't believe Kyle Van Noy has a sack this year. He has to get one. Odafe Oweh is really struggling in the contract year. Tavius Robinson is out snapping him right now by a lot. All right, they trust him more, so that's not good for Odafe Oweh. But if he can come in this game, get a sack and a half, maybe not lift his confidence, and he can get rolling. Because right now it's not looking good for him. Right, this is in the money year you want to play your best, and he's not playing his best at all. All right. So Zach Orr, I'm looking at you, man. Can you devise a game plan that's going to effectively get after C.J. Stroud? This is a Texas offensive line that has not been very good. All right. Can you devise a plan to get after them? That's what it's going to come down to. All right. Simple as that to me, as far as the defensive goal. And I believe the defense is, in this game especially, is definitely more important than the offense. All right. So the Ravens defense has to do something. Has to. All right, and then lastly, X-Factors for this game. X-Factor for this game is going to be the Ravens playmakers on offense, okay? Now, likewise, I still am holding the sentiment of, like I said, a couple seconds ago, the defense is more important. But this offense can't go out there and do nothing, right? So if you have your backup quarterback in the game, that means the Ravens offensive playmakers have to make plays for Cooper Rush. So when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about Derrick Henry getting touches, right? Todd Monken, we gotta have Derrick Henry more involved in the game, right? I don't want Derrick Henry in the game for 50% of the snaps. If he can play 60%, 10% bump, that's great. All right. Now a lot of that has to do with situational. I get all of that. But every time it's 2nd and 8, we don't have to take Derrick Henry off the field. We don't. Keep him on the field, because now you still have the threat of a run. Justice Hill comes on the field when it's 2nd and 8. Okay, we're passing the ball. You get what I'm saying? So Derrick Henry more touches, right? Also, screen game. This is a very effective pass rush unit. Cooper Rush, like I said, is not going to escape this pass rush at all. So screen games, screen game is Zay Flowers, screen game when Justice Hill is in the game. Give Justice Hill a screen. All right. So screen game, that's what I'm looking for. And then, Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman are needed, very much needed. Okay. So Bateman had a really good game. Well, good game for his standards as far as this year, right? Because they haven't gotten him involved until last week. He had a decent game. Zay Flowers, what was that versus the Lions? That Bateman had a good game. They run it together to me right now. But either way, Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman, I'm looking for these guys to get involved. All right. I don't think this is going to be a heavy pass game plan, right? I'm not trying to say, every single offensive player needs to get involved. That's not realistic, right? Or you're going to have the Cooper Rush throwing the ball 50 times. But I would love to see games where it just seems like it's only one wide receiver that can have a good game at a time right now. If Zay Flowers has a good game, then Bateman's not getting involved. If Bateman has a good game, then Zay Flowers is not getting involved. They need to find a way to have an effective game where both of these guys can be involved in the offense. And that's not going to involve throwing the ball 30, 40, 50 yards down the field, of course. But this intermediate game, quick slants, quick hitters, things like that, get them guys involved in the offense, all right? And then lastly, I'm not saying this one is super important, but Isaiah Likely to return back to the game, return back to the Ravens officially last week, versus the Chiefs, right? I don't believe he had a single target. All right. Now they're easing the back into the offense. I think he still played a lot, though. Don't get me wrong. But if we could get Isaiah Likely a couple targets, I think that'd be nice for him, right? We want to have him feeling comfortable, right? Ravens have 2 games in a bye week. I would love for when Lamar Jackson hopefully is back week 8 versus the Chicago Bears, that Isaiah Likely is feeling like himself and fully grooved into this offense, right? And it's not like, oh, well, he hasn't really been used at any point this year. Hopefully Lamar Jackson gets him unlocked. No, let's get him involved now. So when Lamar Jackson is back, this offense is still continuing to roll. Hopefully, all right. So yeah, that's my keys to the game. That's my X factor. That's my thoughts on the game. As far as the Ravens, for the Ravens to win this game, I think it has to be something around the realm of 20-17, 23-17. If it starts to go into the way the defense can't stop anybody and it gets to 30 plus points, the Ravens are not going to win this game scoring 30 plus points. It's just not going to happen, right? So the defense has to keep the Texans 23 and below, and they give the Ravens a shot to win this game. So we'll see what happens there. Give me your thoughts in the comments, but it's Gabriel, just another Fan TV. I'm out.